Well-known author and columnist Regina Brett lives life with an appreciation for each day. As a cancer survivor, her series of life lessons resonate with readers across the world.
First and foremost, you look amazing for 90 years old.
I know. You know, the great thing about the internet saying I'm 90, no matter how I look better than I'll probably look at 90. So I'm like, I got this.
How did that rumor even get started?
I wrote these 45 life lessons when I turned 45, and I had cancer at 41. So to get to be 45 was a get to. Like, wow, I get to grow old. And then when I was 50, I added 5 more lessons. And somebody, I don't know who, put at the top of it, Regina Brett, who is 90. And then they went viral because they thought this wise woman. And some people are disappointed when they find out I'm not 90. They're like,
they're
like, you lied. I'm like, why would I lie and say I'm 90? So, but it works,
That still has been one of your most circulated articles, columns, and now it's turned into a book. How did that, so it started off because you got cancer.
It started off, I had cancer at 41, and my 3 aunts died of cancer. We had a breast cancer gene in our family. So my aunts died at 42, 44, and 58. And so to get cancer at 41, I thought, in my family, it's deadly. And I did all the treatment, the chemotherapy, the radiation, surgery. And when I turned 45, it felt like, wow, I got to live longer than 2 of my aunts. And I was laying in bed, and I was just thinking about all the things I learned in 45 years. And I just started writing in a journal. My bed sheet has ink marks all over it. All my sheets have ink stains, because I just write in bed. And then I went to work the next day at the Plain Dealer, and I typed up 45 lessons, that life taught me. And my editor kind of like rolled his eyes, because he was like, you're going Oprah on me, a little too inspirational. And I said, just run it, just run them, because it felt like it came from that creative fountain when you really have tapped into it and it just flows from you. You just got to get out of the way and release it. And so they went viral a little bit, and then 5 years later, when I turned 50, I added 5 more things. And by then, the internet had advanced even more, and then it just took off. I was getting emails from countries all over the world. And then my editor, Stuart Warner, one day called and said, you should turn this into a book. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I did, and that book turned into God Never Blinks, and it's now in 22 different languages. It's all over the world. I get emails all over. I'm a bestseller in Poland, of all places. I have 6 books in Poland. I'm like number 2 after the Pope there, It was, I know, people say, are you Polish? I'm like, no, but I'm from Cleveland, so maybe there's sort of this Polish-Cleveland connection.
Right, exactly. It's a very powerful thing that you've accomplished.
Well, and it's one of those things that so much of life, the messes you get and the things you don't want become your victories later.
Right.
So you look in the rearview mirror and you're like, yeah, that really worked. And when you're in the middle of it, you're like, I don't want this,
And one thing in reference to that you've talked about is the birth of your daughter.
Oh, my daughter. So my daughter, I got pregnant at 21. I was a student at Kent State. And I got pregnant. It was a big, the whole game of life just went flying in the air. I was living at home with my parents, going to school at Kent, because I lived in Ravenna, which is 6 miles from Kent. And what do I do? I'm a good Catholic girl. I was on parish council at Immaculate Conception at the time, which is not real, how do you break the news here? And I left a note on the refrigerator to tell my parents, I'm pregnant, because I was such a coward. What do I do? So that was my first column, I say. I wrote that little letter, stuck it under a magnet, and went to Kent State that day and knew my life would never be the same. My parents were wonderful. My mom said, whatever we can do to help. My dad was Irish Catholic, never said a word, because the Irish don't talk about sex, it's Irish Catholic. But my dad was wonderful. She was the first grandchild, made him a grandpa. He loved being a grandfather. Aww. And so at the time, it was the crisis pregnancy. It was the crisis in my life. And I was 21, dropped out of school. At the time, I was an EMT. I worked at a funeral home, picked up bodies, ran ambulance for them. And I had to quit my job because I couldn't lift patients anymore and bodies and all that. So all of that turning around of my life put me on a whole new path that, it's a great path. And I always share that I was an unwed mother because a lot of people still have shame about that. Right. And there's always somebody that says, I'm in the same boat, what can I do? And I help them, and that's my gift. And now, greatest gift in my life, my daughter and I are the best friends. She has 3 kids now. I'm like, it keeps getting better.
You and your daughter have shared something that not a lot of other parents have in regards to your breast cancer.
Right. So in my family, my dad had 10 kids in his family. Out of 10 kids, he had 3 sisters who died of breast cancer. My dad died of cancer. His 2 brothers died of cancer. So unfortunately, we have this BRCA1 gene, breast cancer 1. And so I didn't know I had it because I was the first cousin. I have there's 54 first cousins in my dad's side, crazy big families. We have 11 kids in my family, 10 of my dad's brothers, 9 in his. So I was the first of the cousins to get cancer, and I thought, maybe a fluke, it's the 1 out of 9, you know.
Right.
And then as soon as I got cancer, 2 of my cousins got cancer. A couple years later, 2 more got cancer. We're like, this is not coincidence. So they got tested, we found out we had the gene. And my daughter was 19 when I got cancer. And I did everything to stop it. I did chemotherapy, radiation, had both breasts removed. I'm like, I want to live. I tell people, you're choosing life. You know, so your hair falls out, you get to live. So you lose your breasts, you get to live. Compare everything against life, it's worth it, man. Mm-hmm. And then my daughter wanted to get tested. She found out young that she had the gene, and at 29 decided to have a prophylactic double mastectomy because she didn't want to get cancer in her 30s. I had 2 cousins that got it, one at 35, one at 37. So in my family, you get it young and you die young, unfortunately. And of all the cousins who've been diagnosed, with the gene, or nobody's died from breast cancer. We had probably about 5 or 6 of us had cancer, and then another 5 or so just had the double mastectomy, and we're all still here. And again, you can live without breasts. You know, we're in such a culture where, when you get breast cancer, I swear it's like cosmopolitan breasts are staring at you at the grocery store, Victoria's Secrets everywhere. You feel like, oh my God, breasts, breasts, breasts. It's like when you're pregnant, the whole world's pregnant. When you get braces, everybody has braces. It's like all of a sudden, like, breasts matter. And it's like, you know what? It's just part of your body. And if they're going to kill you, they don't matter. To me, they're like bombs ready to go off. Like I can live without them, joyfully, happily.
What would you say then was your toughest part of your cancer journey?
The toughest part of the cancer journey, I really believe, is the day you find out. Mm-hmm. Because everything changes and you don't know. It's a big, giant unknown. And it literally is like that game of life where you get the pink car or the blue people and everything's going along fine, and then it just gets thrown in the air. And you just don't know where it's all going to land. Now, the hardest part is you find out and you don't know, what do I do? Once you can do something, once you know we're doing chemo, we're doing radiation, we're doing surgery, or we don't have to do that, then you can start feeling like, okay, I've got this manageable. Mm-hmm. It's that week or 2 of, oh my God, what does this mean? The big unknown. Mm-hmm. And even chemo, once I made a list once of everything I was afraid of, because all these fears turn up, and I wrote down everything I was afraid of, dying, losing my breasts, losing my hair, getting sick, whatever. And I thought, okay, I just want to live. I can live with all that. And most of it happened, and it was okay. My hair fell out, I was bald. Not something I liked, but you know what? There's no bad hair days now. My hair's frizzy, it's like I got hair. I carry a picture of me bald in my wallet. Every day's a good day, man. I got hair. Go to the dentist, a little pain, it's like, I went through chemo. Sinus infection, man, I had radiation. It's like, up against cancer, nothing is that big. One of the beautiful moments of my marriage, the hair was falling out. You think you can cut it short and you'll look okay, and then the short hair's in your Cheerios, you're eating bangs, you're like, oh, I can't do this. So he shaved my head, we're leaning over the sink, and you have no idea how am I gonna look bald. Like, I've never seen me bald,
Right.
And the moment when he's shaving my head and we both look in the mirror, and I see him crying, now I'm crying, but I look pretty good, man. I'm like, I've got a nice scalp, and we knew we could do it. And it was this beautiful moment, I know he loves me, and I know we're going to get through it. And he kept saying, we're in this for the long haul. Because the short haul's a mess of anything, any diagnosis. The short haul is of the big unknown. You lose somebody you love. In the short run, it's horrible. In the long run, you start to learn how to live a day at a time, hour by hour without something. So I would be on call for, they call it death calls. 3 in the morning, you get a call, we got a body, you go to somebody's home, hospital. But the great thing is, as much as I didn't like it, because you're picking up dead bodies, you have to clean them off, wash them. It's not a glamorous job.
I want to bring you back to your childhood, because
Yes.
you did grow up in Ohio your entire life, right?
I really love Ohio. I love it called the heart of it all. And I used to have this running joke with one of my fellow columnists at the Plain Deer. He was from North Carolina. And they always brag about being first in flight, at Kitty Hawk. And I said, yeah, but we were first, second, and third. We had John Glenn, Neil Armstrong, and the Wright brothers. So
Yes, we
Ohio
did.
has it all, man, I grew up in Ravenna, which is about an hour south of Cleveland. When you move to Cleveland, they always say, are you east side or west sider? And you're afraid, uh-oh, what do I choose?
I'm an East Sider.
Because you almost feel like you need a passport to cross the bridge over the Cuyahoga. So I always say I'm from the south. I'm from Ravenna. It's like an hour
Smart.
south. And it's a small town, 12,000 people. Came from a big family, 11 kids. And when I was a kid, we had all these rubber companies. We were the balloon capital of the world. And then they all folded. And if you go back to my hometown, it looks like every song Bruce Springsteen sang of the closed up factories. Every house looks like it needs paint. I mean, the people are wonderful, but the poverty has grown, you know. But you feel like the house that built you, the town that built you is still who you are.
Yes.
Which I think is a good thing. And you know what? We probably were poor, but we didn't know it. My dad would just say, you don't need that. And we think, okay, we don't need it. We wore uniforms, so we looked like everybody else, went to Catholic school. So we all had the same blue plaid, so you didn't know who the rich kids were and the poor kids. And I kind of like that.
Were they strict?
My dad ruled with a belt. And looking back, my dad had a lot of probably post-traumatic stress from his own childhood and also from the war. He was a tail gunner. Served like 33 missions over China, Burma, and World War II. Wow. And so the belt was in our house was not about you did something wrong. It was like rage and anger. So it took me a lot of years of counseling to deal with that I am not a bad kid, and I never was. We just had too many kids.
And so it wasn't just a threat.
We got hit a lot, yeah. Yeah, my dad, you know, again, I'm sure that's how my dad was raised. My dad's parents were from Ireland, got off the boat from Ireland. They escaped poverty of Ireland. I mean, real poverty, like you get on a boat and leave everything you have because you can't eat, poverty. So you come here, then my grandpa had 10 kids, had a farm, lost it all in the Depression. So you go from poverty in Ireland to poverty in America. So my dad was the first generation to not be so poor you can't eat, you know? So we had a roof over our head and we had food on the table. That was America, like, wow, we are living the dream. That poverty in Ireland, it's that survival mode you're in. Yeah. And when you lose everything, I'm sure there's a stress that knows no bounds of what it does to you. So I got some help. People in my family have gotten counseling. And the good thing, I look at it like an evolution, you know, like I don't hit my kids. My kids will do even better than not hitting their kids. Like my thing was when I got pregnant at 21, I told myself, I don't know how to be a parent, but I will never hit her and I'll always tell her I love her. That was my start. And every day I tell her I love her. Every phone call we end with I love you.
When did you know you wanted to be a writer?
You know, when I was a kid, I got the book Harriet the Spy, probably in 4th grade, you know, and I started spying on my brothers and sisters, taking notes. When they weren't home, I'd go in their drawers. They probably don't even know this. I hope they don't listen. But I would like look through their doors, take notes. You know, I was obnoxious. But I love that idea of making sense out of the world. I think that's why I did it. I was trying to make sense out of the world I lived in. And so I just kept writing. I never worked on the yearbook, never worked on the newspaper in high school. I was afraid I would be no good. So I got into science instead, because you know what it is? When you're given a gift, you're so afraid of doing it wrong, a lot of people just bury it. So I was going to major in biology because I love science. And so I went to Kent State. My first major was biology. Then I flunked chemistry. Like, oh my God, what do I do? I've got 25 hours of chemistry ahead of me. So I'll change to botany. Then I got a D in zoology. I'm like, okay, botany's not going to do it. So I changed to conservation, and then I got pregnant and dropped out of school. And then for 6 years worked crazy jobs. And every job, though, is a part of the puzzle that makes sense in your life. You know, I worked at a funeral home. I picked up bodies. I was comfortable with death and dying.
How did you do that? Why did you even sign up and say, yes, this is a job I'm going to do?
Because when you live in a little town and you don't have a car, you get a little pencil and you have a little string. You go, okay, a mile from where I live or 2 miles, where can I walk to work? You wash cars, you work calling hours, you pick up bodies, you do everything. And back then, the funeral homes ran ambulance before the fire departments took it over in the 80s in small towns. And so I was an EMT at Kent State. They had an ambulance program. So I would be on call for, they call it death calls. 3 a.m, you get a call, we got a body, you go to somebody's home, hospitals. But the great thing is, as much as I didn't like it, because you're picking up dead bodies, you have to clean them off, wash them. You know, it's not a glamorous job.
How long did that even take you to adapt to being
okay with that?
You know, the first couple,
you're like, I can't believe I'm the one picking up the dead body. You know, the first couple, then it's like, okay. And so working with people who are in their grief, you know, I would go to a home and grandma just died and I've got to go help take her out of her bedroom into the hearse to the hospital to be pronounced. And so you talk to people and you learn how to talk to people who just lost somebody they loved. Well, guess what, as a reporter, I can't tell you how many times I was the knock on the door. Tell me about your son who was just shot. Tell me about your daughter who died. And the funeral home taught me how to do that. Journalism school didn't teach me that. The funeral home taught me that. You know, working on deadline, ambulance taught me that. You know, you're doing CPR, that's a deadline. Not, oh, I need your story by 5 o'clock. Okay. I never missed deadline because you couldn't. So all those broken jobs, I love that Rascal Flatts song, God bless the broken road that led me straight to you. That's what life is. It's this broken, messy road, and it leads you to exactly to the person you're supposed to love, the family you're supposed to have, the career you're supposed to have. But we keep wanting some perfect version that we thought we were going to get, but that broken one's better. I was a finalist for Pulitzer twice, which was really an honor because they pick like the top 3 and then, you know, you're not in it. But like if it was an Olympic, at least be the bronze, which is pretty cool. But really the thing that matters most to me is when people say, I put your column on my refrigerator. That place under that refrigerator magnet, to me, is the biggest award.
So what led you, how did you finally eventually start writing professionally?
So I dropped out of school, had my daughter, and I told myself when she's 6 years old and she goes to school, kindergarten, whatever, I'll go back to college. She got back to school, got to school, and I went back to Kent State, and I thought, I've always loved writing. I got the book, What Color's Your Parachute? Great book. Richard Bowles, he died a few years ago. Great book. What Color's Your Parachute? It had a chapter in the back called Finding Your Mission in Life. I did every exercise in that book, and when I got done, I knew I wanted to be a writer. I always knew, but I finally had proof because I did these exercises. And in that book, there's a chapter, Finding Your Mission in Life, and Frederick Buechner was quoted. He's a minister, and he said, everybody has a mission in life. And I didn't know that because I grew up Catholic, and the nuns and priests had the mission in life. You know, God calls you, like, don't pick me, God. I don't want to be a nun. And so he said, your mission in life is where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. So you find what you love to do and go where the world needs it, and that intersection is where you belong. So I'm like, I love to write, but like I got to raise a kid. I can't like sit and write novels and wait till they get published. I got to put food on the table. And so I thought, well, let me go to college. I went back to Kent State. They like worked at Kent State to help me, and I got a job at the Lorraine Journal. I was there 6 months, and I had a mentor because at Kent State they said get a mentor. I had a guy, Bill O'Connor, who worked at the Beacon Journal, and I would send Bill my clips just to get his advice. I didn't know, but Bill sent my clips to the Beacon Journal editor. So one day I'm at the Lorraine Journal and the phone rings. I'm on deadline, and it's an editor at the Beacon Journal saying, we'd like to interview you for a job. I'm like, I said, I'm on deadline, and I hung up because I really was on deadline. They had a warning go off, you know, papers being printed. I'm typing away. I got the phone and thought, oh my God, I just blew my future. I hung up on an editor.
No, I'm sure they respected you
well,
for that.
He loved it. He goes, you put the deadline first. I'm like, oh, good. So get a mentor, man. Having Bill O'Connor sending them my writing, I didn't know I was ready for that. And I was the best person in the newsroom for talking to families who lost somebody. I mean, I interviewed so many parents who lost their kids to gun violence or whatever, because people say Regina's the one for that. Because you learn that compassion from life. Right. And then I got the job at the Plain Dealer. I became a columnist. I've been a columnist since '94. I love writing columns because you get your own opinion out there.
Right. So now that you write columns, you've been doing it for so long, how do you decide what topics, especially now, how do you decide what topics you're going to be able to cover, and are any off limits?
Well, you know, I used to write 3 columns a week when I was at the Beacon Journal. Started in '94, and then I went to the Plain Dealer, wrote 3, and then went down to 2, and then I went down to 1. And now I pretty much left full-time column writing to write books, and I write for the Jewish News now, Cleveland Jewish News. But the thing with column ideas, they're just stories everywhere. You know, people go, how do you come up with ideas? My problem is, how do I pick? There's so many. Because you'll be at the grocery store, you overhear something, it's like, there's a story, everywhere you go, on the bus. There's a story to tell. And what I try to do is to go where the crowd isn't going. You know, there's always that pack of journalists. I want to be the one that's not going there. You know, I want to find what's that story behind the story. Anything off limits, you know, I kind of set up my own idea of what I want to write. I try to not do the predictable, and I don't want to pile on the anger. If everybody's already weighed in and says this person's decision was bad, we don't need one more person doing that. Maybe we need somebody to turn the issue a little sideways and see it a little differently. I've always been that kind of the lone voice saying, but what about this maybe?
And so you do right now for the Cleveland Jewish News, yes. But you are not Jewish.
I know, it's really strange. You know, when I left the Plain Dealer, Kevin Adelstein from the Cleveland Jewish News said, let's have lunch. And I thought, oh, sure. So we're sitting there having lunch. He goes, I'd like to have you write for the Cleveland Jewish News. I said, you do know I'm not Jewish? He goes, yes, I know. My husband is Jewish. We always joke, it's the perfect combination. I'm Catholic, he's Jewish. So the joke dating-wise is that Jewish men are taught to do everything for their wives. You can't do enough to make your wife happy. Catholic women are taught, you know, the reward's in heaven, so whatever you get put up with. He goes, no matter what I do, she's happy. So it's like the perfect relationship. The other thing, though, with the Catholic Jewish thing is it's so rich in traditions, family and culture, and so there's a lot that's the same. And I think that What Kevin liked about my writing was that kind of inspirational nature to find what's the deeper meaning. I want journalism, for me, that deepens people's lives, makes them question things. I call them perennial columns, that like you read it 5 years later and you still move by it. It didn't expire a week later.
So you have won numerous awards throughout your career. Do you have one you're most proud of?
You know, I tell people, I mean, I was a finalist for Pulitzer twice, which was really an honor because they pick like the top 3 and then, you know, you're not in it. But like if it was an Olympic, it'd at least be the bronze, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But really the thing that matters most to me is when people say, I put your column on my refrigerator. That place under that refrigerator magnet, to me, is the biggest award. That's when people come to me with their wallet. I had a man come up to me, open his wallet. He took out this weathered piece of column that I wrote about my dad. My dad was a sheet metal worker, and he had a lunch pail, and I have my dad's hard hat in my garage. When I pull in, I see his hard hat and his lunch pail and his steel-toed work boots. And this worker said, you know, I wrote a column about how my dad, his work mattered because he gave me this foundation. And this guy called me at 3 in the morning from getting off work at a welding shop and said, that column made me realize what I'm doing matters to my kids. And this person had the same column in his wallet and said, I save this, I read it every day. I'm like, oh. Now, awards are nice, and they are, but at some point, you dust them and you put them in a closet, and then they don't matter. But when I walk into a judge's office in downtown Cleveland, and under the glass on their desk, there's a column I wrote about some injustice to somebody. Wow, they saved it, and it shaped how they are as a judge. One of the greatest things, I mean, this probably is one of the greatest achievements. I changed Open Discovery in Ohio with the help of all my readers. It used to be prosecutors could hide information, and did. And we had a lot of people in Cuyahoga County that would take police reports and they would just vanish, or they would read parts of it. And we had a man on death row, Joe D'Ambrosio, for 20 years because prosecutors hid information. So I worked hard to change, not just to get Joe off death row and now he's free, but to change it so you can no longer hide information. So we changed Open Discovery so that we have it. It used to be you could just, if you didn't have the records or you had them, you could make them disappear. Not anymore. So I had a column after column after column, got people to sign petitions, and so we changed the law, the criminal rule in Ohio.
We talked about you've spent your entire life here in Ohio. Why?
So I'll be 63, May 31st, and I love turning 63 because when you get cancer at 41, you hope to get to be 63. I love that Cleveland, we're like this big, small town. You know, like you run into people everywhere, that there's the connections everywhere. You know everybody, but we're also like that big city. World-class orchestra, an art museum that's off the charts. Man, we get stuff that, you know, New York City doesn't get. Our sports teams. I love the drama, the shot, the drive, the fumble. It's Cleveland, man.